I hold grandmother Lila's hand-knit scarf, brushing the soft yarn between my fingers, as if its texture could somehow bring her back. The funeral parlor smells faintly of artificial flowers and polished wood. I sit quietly in a corner chair, watching my family display their version of grief. Mom dabs her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, releasing occasional exaggerated sobs that echo off the mahogany walls. Every so often, she slips away to the bathroom, returning with freshly applied mascara and her phone in hand. The soft click of her camera captures a posed moment beside the polished casket for her social media followers. "This lighting is awful," she mutters, reviewing the images. Dad lingers by the entrance, his voice raised as he argues with the funeral director. "These charges are ridiculous," he insists, tapping furiously at his phone. "My stock alerts don't stop just because..." He lowers his tone, glancing around. "Just because we're dealing with a family situation." To my father, death is merely a disruption to monitoring his investments. Across the room, my brother Cole slouches in his chair, head bent over his phone, endlessly scrolling. The glow of his cryptocurrency app reflects in his glasses. He hasn't looked up in 20 minutes, not even when relatives stop by to offer condolences. I close my eyes, remembering weekends at Grandma and Grandpa's home. The scent of cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings. Grandpa Walter showing me how to change the oil in his old delivery truck. His steady hands guiding mine. "Hadley, girl," he would say. "Knowing how things work matters more than knowing how to buy new ones." A tear rolls down my cheek. A real one. Later, we gather in Aaron Feldman's office. The family attorney's space is lined with wood panels, shelves of leather-bound books, and a faint trace of pipe smoke. Mom quickly takes the central chair, arranging herself like she's posing for a portrait. Dad stands behind her, hands gripping the chair back, as though claiming authority. "I was thinking we should list the Harbor House immediately," Mom says, examining her nails. "The market's high, and that view will bring top value. The boat will sell quickly, too," Dad adds with a nod. "And the antiques," she continues. "Let's not rush," Cole interrupts, finally lifting his gaze from his phone. "I already have buyers interested in Grandpa's trucks. My startup could use the capital." Aaron clears his throat, cutting through the noise. He glances briefly at me, something unreadable in his expression, then sets a thick document on his desk. "As executor of Walter and Lila Monroe's estate," he begins formally, "I'm required to read their final wishes exactly as written." My family leans forward. He adjusts his glasses and reads, his voice calm and deliberate. Legal phrases roll by until he pauses at the decisive line. Taking a breath, he continues. "I hereby bequeath my entire estate, valued at approximately $31.5 million to my granddaughter, Hadley Elizabeth Martin." The silence that follows is heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. I blink, convinced I've misheard. "The entire estate?" Dad repeats, his voice low and tense. "There must be some mistake," Mom insists, her polished expression gone. Cole springs to his feet. "What did you do?" he demands, glaring at me. "How did you manipulate them?" The accusation cuts deeper than a slap. "I didn't," I manage, my voice trembling. "I had no idea." Aaron raises his hand for calm and turns to his computer. "Walter and Lila expected this reaction. They left something for you to see." He swivels the screen toward us. There they are, Grandma and Grandpa sitting side by side on their porch swing. They look tired but firm. "If you're watching this," Grandpa begins, "then our decision has come as a shock to some of you." Grandma's soft voice continues. "Gregory, Serena, Cole, we've seen how you speak about us when you think we can't hear, how you plan for our money while we're still alive." My throat tightens as memories return. I remember being dropped off at their simple-looking home, which secretly held millions, while my parents went to networking events. I recall teenage me helping Grandpa with his small fleet of trucks, the quiet base of a shipping empire. I remember Grandma teaching me how to bake, how to garden, how to live with purpose instead of appearances. "Hadley is the only one who ever loved us for who we are," Grandma says, her eyes filling, not for what we could give her. The video ends. Aaron shuts his laptop with a quiet sense of finality. In the parking lot, Dad corners me near my car, his breath hot against my face. "You'll transfer control to me tomorrow," he says, voice low and threatening. "You can keep 12%. "Darling," Mom adds, appearing at his side, her concern as practiced as her sorrow. "This kind of money needs experience. You aren't prepared for it." Cole stands behind them, his presence heavy. Remember what family loyalty means, Hadley. Remember who takes care of who. I clutch my keys tightly, the edges digging into my palm. I need time to think, I say, voice unsteady but firm. Dad's expression hardens. Remember who owns your apartment, Hadley. Remember one phone call could leave you without a home. They walk away, united in their entitlement. I stand frozen, the keys cutting into my skin, the weight of $31 million and my grandparents' trust pressing down on me like something I can feel. That night, I pace my small studio apartment, panic tightening my chest. Everything I own fits inside this room. My job as a school counselor barely pays the rent. I have no savings, no backup plan. I sink onto my bed, still gripping Grandma's scarf, when a loud knock at my door makes me jump. Management inspection, a rough voice calls. My phone rings. Aaron's name flashes across the screen. Hadley, he says urgently. They're planning to lock you out. It's illegal, but they might still try. You need to leave. Now. Tears blur my vision as I stuff essentials into a backpack, my hands trembling so badly I can barely zip it shut. I never imagined inheriting a fortune would make me feel more exposed than ever. But as I grab Grandma's scarf and wrap it around my neck, it's as if her voice whispers in my ear, "Stand your ground, Hadley. Some things are worth fighting for." The next day, rain beats against my windshield as I pull up to Grandma and Grandpa's home in Gig Harbor. The sprawling craftsman sits back from the road, wrapped in cedar and stone. Despite its waterfront location, it remains modest compared to the shining modern mansions around it. I sit in the car, watching raindrops slide down the glass, my heart pounding. Just 24 hours ago, I was running from my apartment with only a backpack. Now I'm about to step into a house worth millions, one that somehow belongs to me. The front door opens before I can knock. Miguel Alvarez stands there, his weathered face solemn. For 15 years, he has managed the estate, becoming more family than staff. "Miss Hadley," his voice falters slightly. "Welcome home." I step inside, dripping onto the worn oak floors. The air smells of lemon oil and cinnamon, just as it always has. "Your grandmother asked me to give you this," Miguel says, holding out a small brass key. "If things ever turned out this way." He leads me into Grandpa's study, where a massive antique desk dominates the room. The key turns in the lock of the bottom drawer, revealing a worn leather journal tied with a faded ribbon. "She died, said you'd understand when the time came." Miguel squeezes my shoulder before he leaves me alone. I curl into Grandpa's reading chair by the fireplace, tucking my feet under me as I open the journal. The first entry is dated 10 years earlier. Gregory came today asking for another loan, claimed his investment would triple within months. When Walter hesitated, he reminded us how expensive Cole's college is. We wrote the check. Walter worries we'll never see that money again. My stomach tightens. I flip ahead several months. Gregory never mentioned repayment. When I asked, he acted as if I'd forgotten he'd already paid us back. Walter said to let it go. It's only money, but the pattern bothers me. I turn the pages, fingers trembling. Serena brought designers to measure rooms and take photos, saying the house looked tired. Later, I caught her photographing Walter's mother's silver service. She jumped and said she needed inspiration for an anniversary party. The door creaks. June Porter, the housekeeper of over 20 years, enters with a tray of tea. Her eyes are red. "You're reading Mrs. Lila's journals," she says, not a question. "Did you know about all this?" I gesture to the open pages. June sets the tray down. "I kept records too," she says, and disappears, returning with a banker's box. She places it on the desk. Inside, financial documents, loan agreements your father never repaid, failed startup proposals from your brother. On top, a thick folder. Copies of property transfer forms your mother tried to get Mrs. Lila to sign 3 months before she died. Supposedly updated estate plans from their advisor. I spread the papers across the desk. Thousands of dollars funneled into Dad's failing ventures. Cole's repeated requests for seed money that yielded nothing. Mom's attempted transfers meant to move ownership quietly before death. They were draining the estate. For years, June confirms, your grandfather insisted on trusting his son. Your grandmother saw more clearly. I find an entry from Christmas 2 years ago. Cole drank too much. When he thought Walter and I had gone to bed, I overheard him tell Gregory, "When the old folks die, we're set for life." Gregory laughed. Our grandson laughed about our deaths. My throat constricts. I remember that Christmas I worked double shifts to afford the train ticket. Mom complained about my shabby sweater while Cole showed off a designer watch. The doorbell rings. June checks her watch. That'll be Mr. Shaw and Miss Park. Marcus Shaw arrives first, carrying a leather portfolio. His composed face is tense. As Grandpa's financial advisor for 20 years, he's the one who truly understood their wealth. Hadley, he says, taking my hand, I brought the complete portfolio. You need to know what you're protecting. Evelyn Park follows, silver hair pulled back sharply. She was Grandpa's business partner at Summit Freight for 3 decades and carries company records. Summit employees report strange visitors asking about shipping routes and client contracts, she says plainly. Aaron comes last, legal documents under his arm. I've prepared preliminary protective measures. We need to move fast. They gather around the dining table, forming a circle of protection I didn't know I'd need. Each brings a piece of the puzzle, revealing the business my grandparents built and how methodically my family has tried to dismantle it. My phone buzzes. Dad left a voicemail. You have no idea what you're up against, Hadley. This can end with everyone happy, or it can get very ugly. Your choice. While we strategize, the doorbell rings again. A courier hands a manila envelope with no return address. Inside are childhood photos with faces crossed out in red marker. This is escalating, Aaron says, bagging them for evidence. Summit employees report strange visitors, someone repeats. Your brother has started posting about your mental instability online. Your mother has called your workplace with family concerns. My hand trembles as I set down my teacup. What do we do? I ask. File for emergency protective orders, Aaron replies, pulling out prepared forms. The evidence is overwhelming. Judge Carter will approve them immediately, June adds. Miss Lila set aside the cottage in Port Orchard in a separate trust. It's not part of the main estate, somewhere safe if you need it. I think of my students, the kids who count on me every day. I'll need to request leave from work. The weight of everything crashes down. I step into Grandma's garden, still wet from rain, and try to steady myself. Her roses will soon bloom without her here to see them. I never wanted their money, I whisper into the damp soil. What I wanted was them. Yet as I glance back at the house where unexpected allies now wait, I realize Grandma and Grandpa left me more than wealth. They left me truth, and people willing to help me defend it. 3 days into my return to this old home, my coffee grows cold as I stare at the newspaper. The headline stares back. Family disputes, questionable inheritance. My hand shakes as I read quotes from unnamed relatives claiming Grandma Lila suffered from diminished capacity in her final months. They're really doing this, I murmur into the silence of the kitchen. My phone buzzes with a message from Aaron. Gregory filed an emergency petition, claiming Lila was incompetent when signing the will. Call me. Before I can respond, a notification appears, my mother's smiling face on a screenshot from the local morning show. She dabs away staged tears as she voices concerns about elder exploitation. The caption beneath reads, Heartbroken daughter speaks on suspected elder abuse. The walls of this house, my house, feel as though they are closing in. I set the phone down and breathe deeply, the same way I teach my students to manage anxiety. A knock comes at the door. Miguel steps inside, holding a tablet. Miss Hadley, you should see this. He shows me a social media page Cole launched overnight, Justice for the Monroe Legacy. Already 400 followers with people I've known my entire life leaving worried comments. Summit Freight called, Miguel adds, his tone serious. 3 clients received anonymous letters questioning the company's stability. They're attacking from every direction, I say, my voice sounding unfamiliar. Your grandfather expected this, Miguel replies, gesturing toward the study. Perhaps it's time you read his business journals. In the oak-paneled study, still faintly scented of Grandpa's pipe tobacco, I open a leather-bound journal from 1987, the year Summit Freight nearly collapsed during the recession. His careful handwriting covers the page. Third bank rejected our loan today. Lila suggests selling the house. I won't risk our home. When everyone says you'll fail, that's when you find your backbone. Tomorrow I'll speak to the drivers about a temporary pay arrangement until we endure this. I touch the page, feeling the impressions left by his pen decades ago. My eyes blur with tears. There's more, Miguel says, pulling a small USB from Grandma's desk drawer. Mrs. Lila installed security cameras last year. She never told your parents. On Grandpa's computer, I watch footage from the day of the funeral. My father and Cole move room to room, checking values on their phones, slipping smaller items into their coats. My mother photographs silver and antiques, pausing only to wipe away false tears. They were stealing, I whisper. Pretending to grieve, Mrs. Lila knew, Miguel replies. She documented everything. The chime of the security system interrupts us. Miguel checks his phone. They're at the gates. All of them. My heart pounds as I look out the front window. 3 vehicles idle at the entrance. Dad's Mercedes, Mom's Range Rover, Cole's Tesla. Should I call Aaron? Miguel asks. I recall Grandpa's words, find your backbone. Straightening, I answer, no, I'll handle this. The intercom crackles. My father's voice, smooth and commanding. Hadley, open the gates. We're here for family heirlooms that rightfully belong to all of us. I press the speaker. I'll meet you at the steps. The summer sun beats down as I stand alone on the wide limestone steps. The gates swing open, and I want witnesses for what comes next. Dad strides forward first, briefcase in hand, expression firm but eyes sharp with calculation. Mom follows in a black dress, camera ready, while Cole lingers behind. His shoulders hunched. This has gone far enough, Dad declares, his tone like a boardroom speech. We'll begin with great-grandmother's silver service and the Tiffany lamps. They were specifically listed in the will as part of my inheritance, I say, my voice firmer than I feel. A will we're contesting, Mom interjects, her practiced concern slipping. Sweetheart, you're in over your head. Let us manage things until the courts decide. Cole steps forward, moving past me toward the stairs. I'll just grab my things from my old room. He stops as red lights flash and a low hum fills the air. Aaron's new security system has activated indicator lights tracing the property. I explain calmly. The house is monitored now, cameras streaming to a secure server. Mom gasps theatrically and sinks to the manicured lawn. My own daughter, treating family like criminals. Gravel crunches and new arrivals approach. Miguel comes up carrying a leather binder. Miss Hadley, I brought the inventory and provenance documents you requested. June appears next, gray hair pinned back. I saw them taking items after the service, she announces. I gave a sworn statement to Mr. Feldman. A silver sedan pulls up. Evelyn Park, my grandfather's longtime business partner, steps out with several Summit employees in polos. We came to show support, she says. Walter and Lila built this company on integrity. We stand by their wishes. Aaron's BMW arrives, and he exits with a leather portfolio. Perfect timing, he says. I was on my way to update Hadley about the restraining order. Now I can serve these papers. Dad flushes as Aaron approaches with documents. Mom, still on the grass, watches the crowd with calculated interest rather than distress. From the street, neighbors and friends of my grandparents gather, quietly watching. I step forward. This ends today. My voice carries across the driveway. Everything here is being recorded and filmed. You've shown who you are, and now others are seeing it too. A news van slows at the entrance. Who called the media? Dad snaps. We did, Mrs. Henderson from across the street calls, waving her phone. Neighborhood watch, we look after our own. For the first time since Grandma's death, I see genuine fear in Dad's eyes. He glances at the crowd, the cameras, Aaron's papers. This isn't over, he mutters, but he retreats toward his car. Mom recovers and hurries after him, glancing at the news van. Cole hesitates, looks at me, then follows. That night, I stand alone in my grandparents' bedroom, untouched since their passing. Grandma's knitting basket sits by her chair with needles in an unfinished blue scarf. Grandpa's glasses rest on his nightstand beside a half-read mystery. The grief I'd held off crashes over me, and I sit on the bed, clutching a knitting needle. I don't know if I can be what they believed I could be, I whisper. Dawn finds me still there, watching light filter through lace curtains. A small resolve settles in me, less peace than purpose. Later that morning, the team gathers in Grandpa's study, Aaron with legal folders, Marcus with financial projections, Evelyn with Summit operations reports. I take Grandpa's seat at the head of the table, feeling less like an imposter. We need comprehensive plans, I say. Not just defense, long-term sustainability. Aaron slides injunctions and legal documents across the table. I've prepared protections against continued legal harassment, he says. Marcus taps his tablet. Accounts and investments are secured with extra verification. Evelyn reports that Summit's employee meeting went well. Once staff saw the commitment to operations and jobs, morale stabilized. We're not just defending, I say, thinking of Grandpa. We're building, a soft knock. June enters with a dusty cardboard box. Found this in attic storage. Thought you should see it. The label in Grandma's neat handwriting reads, "In case of Gregory." Inside are decades of organized materials, letters, recorded conversations, financial records, dated and cataloged in her precise way. At the bottom, wrapped in acid-free paper, is a small leather-bound book. My breath catches as I lift it out. "Is this what I think it is?" I ask. June nods. "Mrs. Lila said you'd recognize it when the time came." I hold Grandpa Walter's original 1962 business ledger, the founding record of Summit, freight, and the legal backbone that makes contesting the will almost impossible. Our meeting ends with renewed determination. For the first time since the inheritance shock, I feel Grandpa's resolve, and my own. A week later, I'm preparing to protect what's legally mine and preserve my grandparents' legacy. I sit at Grandpa Walter's antique oak desk, fingertips on the worn edges where his hands once rested. The leather chair still bears his imprint, a small comfort as I lift the phone for what feels like the 100th call. "Mr. Delgado, this is Hadley Martin. Thank you for taking my call." I straighten, drawing on Grandpa's quiet confidence. "I'd like to discuss expanding the profit-sharing program for Summit drivers, effective immediately." The morning passes in a blur of meetings, each one implementing parts of our plan. Summit employees stream into the study, seasoned drivers with calloused hands, curious office staff, grease-streaked mechanics. Each leaves a bit straighter, a bit more hopeful. My grandfather believed a company is only as strong as its people, I tell the department heads. Starting next month, we'll expand profit sharing to all employees, increase healthcare to cover dependents, and double the education fund. Evelyn distributes the detailed packets while Marcus projects financial models showing the plan's long-term viability. Genuine applause fills the room, different from the shallow praise my mother chases. Later, phone to my ear, I speak with Dr. Reynolds about the foundation's focus: vocational training scholarships. Grandpa valued skilled trades. The foundation expert and I map out implementation timelines and circle the areas with the greatest impact. A text from Aaron interrupts. Gregory contacted 3 major clients directly, raising family concerns about Summit's stability. I breathe out slowly. Minutes later, the desk phone rings. Summit's operations manager reports that Mom showed up at my school and confronted the principal about my state of mind. Principal Kovac didn't accept her claims, saying my mother appeared more unstable than I ever have. Miguel arrives with a sealed package delivered anonymously. Inside is a thick folder labeled Evidence of Manipulation, photos of me with my grandparents annotated with dates and questions, printed emails claiming psychological issues, and medical records with highlighted passages alleging undue influence. I flip to the last page and laugh. Accidentally included are their own threatening emails to Grandma Lila from last year, complete with Gregory's signature and legal threats when she refused to transfer property. "They're getting desperate," Aaron says when I call. "Good thing we prepared." The next morning is clear and cool as I get ready for the Chamber of Commerce luncheon. Our sources warned that Dad planned a public confrontation to force me to defend myself before Gig Harbor's business community. "Ready?" Evelyn asks as we arrive at the country club. Marcus adjusts his tie. "Stay calm. We've got this." The banquet room quiets as we enter. Gregory's expression darkens when he sees us, his posture tightening. I feel dozens of eyes on us as we head to the reserved table. Before I can respond, Dad rises and speaks loudly to Carrie. There she is, the woman destroying our family legacy. "Walter would be ashamed of what you've done to Summit Freight." Chamber President Jack Wilson taps his glass and stands. "Actually, Gregory, we're recognizing Summit Freight today for 40 years of business integrity and community service. Walter Monroe established this award, and we're honored to present it to his chosen successor." The audience breaks into applause as Jack signals me to join him at the podium. My steps feel heavy as I stand, aware of Dad's flushed face and Mom's stiff smile. Accepting the Crystal Award, I speak about the foundations my grandparents built Summit Freight upon: excellence in service and investment in people. Their true legacy lies not in money, but in the lives they touched. A standing ovation follows. Former drivers recall how Grandpa supported them in difficult times. Charity leaders praise Grandma's quiet generosity. The local college president introduces a new vocational scholarship funded by the Monroe Foundation. Later, Aaron's press release about Summit's employee protections reaches the news, alongside statements from June and Miguel about my parents' treatment of my grandparents in their later years. The impact spreads quickly. Gregory's business partners distance themselves. Mom is left out of her social fundraising events. Investors pull out of Cole's startup after discovering patterns of financial manipulation. Their country club membership is put under review. I decline every interview request and every chance to publicly criticize them. We focus on building, not tearing down, I tell Miguel when he brings another media invitation. The first fracture appears 3 nights later. At 11:36 p.m., my phone rings. Mom's ringtone. Her voice shakes with sobs. Hadley, this isn't what I wanted. You have to believe me. I remain silent. She starts again. Your father. Then stops. I never meant for it to go this far. The next morning, a text arrives from Cole. Dad's losing control. I didn't know he took loans in my name. Can we talk, just us? Soon after, Gregory's attorney calls Aaron, asking for a meeting without Gregory present. They're collapsing, Aaron tells me. Their united front is breaking. That night, I sit on the porch swing where Grandma and Grandpa once spent evenings. My journal rests in my lap. The pen hovers before I finally write. Victory feels hollow when it involves family. Yet surrendering the legacy they entrusted to me, allowing the exploitation they resisted, is unthinkable. The breeze carries the scent of Grandma's roses, planted decades ago, but still blooming each year. Standing firm doesn't always feel triumphant, but sometimes it is the only way to honor what matters most. A week later, I call my parents for the final confrontation. Walter's antique pocket watch sits on the polished table, marking the time. The grandfather clock strikes 10 as car doors close outside. They're here, ready? Aaron asks, adjusting his tie. I nod, smoothing Grandmother Lila's scarf between my fingers. Miguel greets them at the door, his expression composed. Dad enters first, faltering when he notices Judge Elaine Carter seated at the table. Mom follows, her smile stiffening when she sees Daniel Brooks, the former police chief and Grandpa's longtime friend. What is this? Dad demands. We agreed to a family meeting, not a tribunal. We agreed to mediation, I correct. These are the mediators I've chosen. Cole enters last, uneasy, avoiding eye contact. For a moment, our eyes meet and I see a flicker of shame. Mom approaches with open arms. Darling, surely we can speak privately. Family matters should stay inside. Family matters should involve real family, I interrupt, steady despite my racing heart. Please sit down. Dad's face darkens. I refuse to be part of this circus. Either clear the room or we leave. We move forward with transparency, or not at all, I say, motioning to the chairs. Your choice. After a tense pause, they sit. Aaron distributes folders with precision. Exhibit A, he says, clicking his laptop. The screen lights up with security footage. The night after the funeral. Dad and Cole loading paintings into Dad's SUV, Mom wrapping candlesticks in her scarf. Family heirlooms we were safeguarding, Dad insists, but his tone lacks conviction. Aaron continues. Exhibit B. Financial records appear. Unpaid loans tied to Dad's failed ventures, totaling over $4 million. Exhibit C. More evidence. Mom's attempt to transfer property deeds while Grandma was hospitalized. Cole's defaulted startup loans, recorded conversations planning asset division before Grandpa passed. With each revelation, Dad grows angrier, his knuckles tightening around the folder. Mom's image of control falls apart, mascara streaking her face. Cole keeps his eyes on the table. Judge Carter takes notes quietly. Daniel shifts closer to Dad as his breathing quickens. Finally, Aaron opens Grandma's leather journal. In her words, dated June 14th of last year, Gregory demanded another $100,000 today. When I reminded him of unpaid loans, he hinted we would not want Cole to know certain matters. Walter and I recognize this as a threat. We have decided Hadley is our only hope to preserve what we've built. The room falls into silence except for Mom's soft sobs. You manipulated them, Dad accuses, his voice unsteady. You turned them against us. No, I reply, my calm surprising even myself. Your actions already speak for themselves. I slide a document across the table. This is my proposal, a modest trust fund for each of you, but only if all items taken from this house are returned and every attempt to contact me, Summit Freight or the Monroe Foundation ends immediately. Dad lets out a bitter laugh. And if we refuse? The Then I press charges for theft, elder abuse, and attempted fraud. Everything is documented, signed by a judge, and confirmed by a former police chief. You've turned everyone against us. Dad erupts, slamming his fist down. No, Dad, I reply, meeting his eyes. You did that on your own. The grandfather clock echoes in the silence. 10 long minutes pass before Dad finally grabs the pen Aaron offers. The sound of signatures feels like closing a chapter. As they walk out, Cole hesitates at the doorway, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I wonder if he'll choose differently, but Dad calls his name and he follows. The door shuts, and I let out a shaky breath. Aaron squeezes my shoulder. Judge Carter nods approvingly. Daniel's worn face softens into a smile. Walter would be proud, he says quietly. True strength isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about knowing when enough is enough. I touch Grandma's scarf wrapped around my neck. I never wanted their money, I whisper. I only wanted family. I know, Aaron replies. That's why your grandparents trusted you with everything they built. Outside, engines start, doors slam, and they drive away. Deep down, I know it's the last time. I am my grandparents' legacy, not their wealth, but their values. Some boundaries once set must never be crossed. 6 months later, I still arrive at school by 7:30. My counseling office remains a safe place for listening and guidance. The brass nameplate, Hadley Martin, student counselor, is the title I value most, even more than executor or beneficiary on the trust papers. This morning, a small clipping from the business section lies on my desk. Summit Freight reports record profits under its new employee ownership model. Walter's trucks still roll through town, but now 68 drivers hold a stake in their future. Miss Martin, my assistant calls, your foundation guests are here. The Lila and Walter Monroe Foundation exists on paper and in $12 million of carefully managed funds, but today it becomes real, our first scholarship recipients. 5 students wait nervously in the conference room, holding acceptance packets. Their eyes light up as I explain the vocational fund, full tuition, living stipends, guaranteed apprenticeships. My grandparents believed in building things that last, I tell them. Now you're part of that legacy. Later, I drive the familiar road to the harbor house. The property feels lighter now, as if the shadows have lifted. Evelyn's sedan and Marcus's Volvo are parked outside. Inside, the dining table once marked by conflict now hosts celebration. June sets Lila's china while Miguel arranges Walter's chess set. Remember our first meeting here? Aaron asks. You could hardly speak. Hard to believe you're the same person who stood against Gregory Martin. Evelyn laughs. I run my hand along the table's edge. Same house, same people, but a different Hadley. We toast with sparkling cider when Marcus announces the Foundation's first major project, a 3D printing lab for the community college. Lila and Walter would be so proud, Miguel says, his eyes glistening. That night, I flip through my therapy journal, tracing the journey from anxiety to purpose. Pages of grief work give way to June's recipes from Lila's kitchen. Notes on Walter's chess openings sit beside pressed flowers from the cottage garden. Even the old cat, Professor, finally lets me stroke his ears on Lila's chair. 6 months ago, he hissed whenever I entered. Progress takes many forms. My phone buzzes with a familiar number. Gregory's business has failed, and he needs a loan. Hours later, Serena sends her application for the Foundation's board. By night, Cole texts about his newest startup. Same promises, same pattern. My reply remains unchanged, polite but firm refusal. On my 30th birthday, friends surprise me at the cottage. No expensive gifts, just thoughtful tokens. A vintage book, garden seeds, a handmade scarf. Evelyn raises her glass. To choosing family by their actions, not their blood. Aaron updates us on new legal protections. Marcus outlines the Foundation's growing impact. The following Tuesday, a sophomore sits in my office whispering about family pressure. They say I owe them, that everything they did was for me. I listen with understanding, then hand her a packet of resources. Therapy options, legal advice, boundary-setting tools. Your worth isn't defined by their approval, I tell her, the words I once needed myself. At sunset, I walk the grounds, stopping by a newly planted grove, 1 tree for each scholarship recipient. A bench carries a plaque. Legacy lives through love. Lila and Walter. I open Lila's journal to its blank pages and begin writing my own. Looking toward the glowing house, I feel a peace no amount of money could buy. The inheritance that matters most was never in the accounts. It lives in love, values, and legacy.